Alright guys, what's up? This is a new video today. We are doing the Buster Blader tier list. This is very exciting. It's a very fun deck, and it's honestly one of the best legacy decks, like, period, because most of its support is really recent. We'll go into all of that. Just right off the bat, Buster Blader got released in 2003. These 4 cards got released in 2004, and then many years later, all of these cards got released after 2015, which is kind of insane. There's almost 10 years of no new Buster Blader cards. So because a lot of the cards are modern, a lot of them are going to be better. There's not going to be as many F tiers as there were in previous ban lists. In previous ban lists, there were just unbelievable amounts of F tiers. Oh, tier lists, yeah. There's been so many different F tiers, but not anymore. There's going to be just a few. But without further ado, enough of that stuff. Let's get started. If you enjoy this series, subscribe. And if you want to see something else, please let us know in the comment section below. But let's get started. Right off the bat, we have Buster Blader, regular old Buster Blader.
I'd say he's about B tier.
Yeah, B tier is fair.
Usually the namesake of the deck is usually A tier because you need 3 of it and whatnot. But in this case, you actually don't need 3 Buster Bladers.
You don't know.
You can run 2, maybe even 1, and get away with it.
Because there's actually a clone.
A retrain that,
yeah.
And unlike other retrains of like main deck monster, like the main namesake monsters, the retrain's actually a lot better, and a lot smoother to use
in certain situations.
Yeah.
Then we've got Miracle Restoration. This is absolutely an F tier. It's a terrible card in every single way. Basically, what this card does is you remove 2 spell counters from the field. So just to give you context, Buster Blader is not even a spell counter deck, but if you were to remove 2 spell counters, you could special summon a Dark Magician or a Buster Blader from the graveyard. It's totally irrelevant, totally useless. There are way easier ways to do this. I don't even know why you would want to do this, to be honest with you. It completely doesn't fit within the deck. It's a terrible card. It's not good in Dark Magician. It's not good in this deck. It's too slow, and I really don't even... It's worse than Call of the Haunted, and you wouldn't even play Call of the Haunted. Alright, so next we've got another F tier. It's White Magician. What is it? White Skilled Magician.
It's Skilled White Magician.
Skilled White Magician. Another terrible card. Basically, every time a spell card is activated, it gets a counter. After it has 3 counters, you can remove those 3 counters and then special summon a Buster Blader from your deck. I don't know why in the world you would want to play such a slow card. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea.
You have to open up 3 spell cards that you can use back to back, and all that just to get 1 Buster Blader just seems like
it's dumb.
It's not going to help you with anything, really.
What's crazy is this trap card right here, one of the archetypal trap cards, which is very good, actually summons a Buster Blader from deck, and you don't even use that effect. You use the other effect, which is the fusion effect. So that's how little it means to actually summon a Buster Blader in this deck. It's not like a huge part. Next is Emblem.
That's a tough one, because it actually is a really good search spell.
Yeah, on paper this card's actually really good. You just don't really need it.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird, because everything C tier is probably fair for it, because it's not a bad card. It's a good card.
It's actually extremely good, because
it's not a hard one. Yeah, deck or graveyard, not at once per turn at all. You can activate 3. It doesn't matter. And also, if you add from graveyard, you can actually add this other Buster Blader, the new one, the new one, the newer. You can add the Buster Blader of Destruction Swordsman from your graveyard, because it counts as a Buster Blader in the graveyard. So you can add the old Buster Blader from your deck, the new one from the graveyard. It's not a bad card by any means. It's actually a fairly good card. It just doesn't synergize all that much with the deck.
There's not much to do with them in the hand.
Yeah,
the main thing. And if they're in the graveyard, they're probably going to get banished.
Yeah, you can summon him off of the new Protector Whelp, but that's about it from the hand. But generally speaking, it's better not to head down that route. This is Dark Paladin. I don't know, top of C tier. Kind of better options than him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not difficult to summon by any means, because you can use stuff like Magicalized Fusion, stuff like that. But it's much easier to summon the other Buster Blader, the other Buster Blader fusion monster, because it gets summoned off of a trap card that you are gonna basically send to the graveyard with the other card. It's too easy to play the other card than it is to play this card, to be honest with you.
Not that he's bad. He is really good, but
yeah, he negates a spell by discarding.
Not once per turn.
Not once per turn. That's really good. Then it has also an effect that allows you to gain 500 for every dragon in the graveyards, either player's graveyards or fields, which is also really good. So we can have quite a bit of attack. It's definitely got some positive characteristics, but generally, I'd say it's just an okay card. Buster Dragon. This card's really good. It's tough to say where to put this. It's either A or S.
I think
You need it, but the trap cards are what make it really good.
I think bottom of S, because it actually
Bottom of
does
S,
allow.
that's fair.
I think it allows for a lot of like it's like, during your opponent's turn, it acts as like almost like a floodgate, like DNA surgery, because it changes all your opponent's monsters they control into dragons.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he just doesn't do that. Like he does other stuff on top of that. Like he equips one of the destruction swords, which is basically the little guys, onto a monster. He summons a Buster Blader monster
During your turn.
Yeah, during your turn, and since he's gonna get destroyed, you're gonna use him for something else. So you can use him and one of the level 1 tuners and go into like Hot Red Abyss and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he does add a lot. Like he's not just like there, like just to sit there. He's gonna help you. What's the word? Move forward in the duel, to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Destruction Sword Flash. I'm only going to put it in B tier because it's a really good card, but like the deck doesn't even use it. Like you don't even have to use this card. This is an extremely good card. Like both effects are really good. Basically, if you control the Buster Blader, the Destruction Destroyer Swordsman, which is the fusion, if you control that monster, you can basically banish all monsters your opponent controls. That is like non-targeting. But the issue with that is that it kind of like is a counterproductive thing to do, because you want your opponent to summon more monsters, because the Buster Blader fusion monster actually does piercing damage. So you technically want them to summon a whole field of monsters. In addition to that, it gains attack for every monster your opponent controls.
That's a dragon.
That's a dragon, but they're all going to be dragon because of the Buster Dragon. So technically speaking, you actually want them to have a field of 5 monsters. So it's kind of like it's totally counterproductive.
I wouldn't say totally counterproductive, because of the new Link monster. Like it could work with that.
Oh yeah, because it doesn't attack.
But that's the only thing. But even then, I think that's stretching a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's like a good card on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's just a really good card in the wrong archetype.
Yeah.
Like if that card was in another archetype, if it was like in like Dark Magician or Ancient Gears or like any other archetype where if you could just control a fusion, you could banish your opponent's, like all of your opponent's monsters, that would be so good. But it's just not productive in this deck, to be honest with you, because if you'll have a lock where you change all their monsters to dragons, and then you change them to defense mode and prevent them from activating their effects. So whether you banish them or not is kind of irrelevant, because they can't activate their effects anyways. So yeah, that's the issue. But the other thing as a graveyard effect, that if a card targets a Buster Blader, or is it a Destruction Sword card, you can negate and destroy by banishing this card, which is also a pretty good effect.
Yeah, it's really good for just protection, and also if they like for things like imperm.
Yeah.
So they start their turn and they go, all right, you have that. Well, I'm just gonna imperm it, and you can just banish that out the graveyard and just protect it.
Yeah. Next, which one is this? This
That's
is
the
Wizard. The Wizard's pretty good. Say somewhere in B tier.
Yeah, 'cause he's unfortunately not a dragon, which conflicts quite a bit.
Yeah, he's a spellcaster,
Which is weird.
It helps certain situations, but the reason he's a spellcaster is for the Buster Blader retrain. Basically, he has an effect where you can send a certain monster, like a monster, to the graveyard, and then you can basically destroy all those types on your opponent's side of the field. And spellcaster, machine, and dragon are like 3 of the most popular card types in Yu-Gi-Oh! Outside of like warriors. You can hit like 2,000 monsters just with those 3 typings. So that's why they do have different like typing. But it is a spellcaster, and it's a bit frustrating. His effect is it basically, if he's equipped to a monster, it becomes like Abyss Dweller on the field, where their graveyards can activate effects. In addition to that, this card can, if you have it in your hand or on the field, you can equip it over to a Buster Blader monster. Although there's even easier ways to equip it if you really wanted to. But its last effect is...
That's the one where you can, I believe you detach him and then you add a Destruction Sword card back from the graveyard, I think it was.
Yeah, you send him
Yeah.
to graveyard, add a Destruction Sword card. Pretty good.
A little bit of recurrence if you want something better.
Yeah. Destruction Sword Memories. It's probably an S tier.
Which
Yeah.
trap is?
This is the one that it has two effects. Effect number one is you can discard this is the on-field effect. You can discard a Destruction Sword card in order to special summon a Buster Blader from your deck. And then effect number two, which is the important effect, which is you can banish this card from the graveyard and then banish materials to summon a Buster Blader fusion monster. That effect is really good because it makes it so easy to set up like a Buster Lock. It's outrageous. All you have to have is like a dragon in graveyard and prologue in your hand, and you basically have the full Buster Lock every single time. You get to summon Buster Dragon and their fusion monster every single time. It's extremely, extremely consistent. But this is the main card that you need for the combo. It's very, very, very good. It's one of the easiest fusion summons of like any deck that I've seen yet. And so definitely that card's very good. Prologue is another S tier.
I think that's above it for sure.
Yeah. Prologue is crazy because even if you didn't want to take that route, it still does so much setup. Basically, on activation for cost, you get to send a Buster Blader and a Destruction Sword card from your deck to your graveyard. And you got to keep in mind all of the Destruction Sword cards, the Destruction Sword Spawn Trap cards, they all have graveyard effects. So it doesn't matter what you're sending, you're still getting some sort of free graveyard effect. So that effect is very good, and by sending those cards for cost, you get to summon a Buster Dragon from your extra deck. So you don't even have to do any of the synchro summoning, anything like that. You just go right to the free special summon, and I imagine it counts as a synchro summon.
I don't think it does, because I don't think you can recur it.
Oh, you can't recur, you can't
I
special
don't
summon it
believe
back?
yeah.
But other than that, it has an effect where you can banish it from the graveyard and then protect Destruction Sword cards on the field
For the whole turn.
for the full turn, and that's also very good because it can protect all of your monsters that you have equipped to your Buster Blader.
As long as it's a Destruction Sword.
Yeah, the Destruction Sword ones, but it'll protect like Wizard and Robot and Dragon, the Buster Dragon. It'll protect those three, and they all have Floodgate effects, and obviously they're going to be protected. Your opponent can't even like Mystical Space Typhoon them. Next, we've got the Buster Blader Retrain. Honestly, this card in certain situations is like slightly better than the regular Buster Blader. The only issue is it's not Buster Blader in the deck, and that kind of creates a bit of an issue because you can still send it, but the means are a little complex. But yeah, it's only a Buster Blader. It's a Buster Blader not in the deck, so you can't even add it with like emblem and stuff like that. But it does have some cool effects, which are
when a monster is destroyed on your opponent's side of the field, you can equip it onto him, and then you can detach and equip, or send and equip to grave, whatever it is, and then destroy all monsters on your opponent's side of the field with that same type. And everything they have is going to be dragons because of Buster Dragon.
Yeah.
So you just equip one monster and you just detach and just destroy everything they have.
yeah.
So he's pretty crazy in that regard.
And yeah, that's about all we probably got to say about him.
Yeah.
Not much else there. We've got Robot. Robot is probably D tier. Robot's honestly not that great. He has the worst of the
Equip effects.
equip Floodgate effects, which is your opponent cannot activate like card effects of spawn trap cards that are already face up. Which basically means like continuous cards, field spells. It's extremely specific too because it depends on if the field spell is like this field spells that activate on like they have effects that activate on activation.
Like Meltdown.
Yeah, like Meltdown, those are still going to be fine, but it'll prevent cards like Dragonic Diagram because Dragonic Diagram needs to be manually activated. So it'll stop cards like that. But I mean it's extremely specific. Like it's such a specific effect. And you really would it's so much better to just do Buster Lock or the Wizard Lock than it is to lock him out with this. This card is extraordinarily specific. Like I don't know why you would want to use that effect.
And his other equip effect isn't that good either. The equipped monster only gains 1,000 attack.
Yeah, and attack points are sort of irrelevant in this deck.
There's already big monsters, so just slapping on 1,000 is like
It's not going to change much.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why it's D tier. It's not that great of a card. The next card is Destruction Swordsman Fusion. This card's probably, again, like this is another card that's really good on paper. It's Destruction Swordsman Fusion. This is a card that without a doubt is really good on paper. Like super good on paper. But it's like the deck just doesn't need it. Because the best way to fusion summon is off these trap cards. These two trap cards basically create the lock anyway. You really don't need to use this card.
But it's still
really good. Yeah,
it's still really good. I wouldn't say tech because it's like an archetype card. It's still a really good like
option.
Yeah, because like if you're playing a dragon deck with this deck, you're already in like a really good spot. Like you're literally playing dragon slayers. So it's like, but having this, it lets you fuse from both sides of the field. So if they summon something big and like you can just chain this onto it, or like not chain, but you can activate this while you have like a Buster Blade or whatever, and then you can just fusion someone with their monster.
Yeah.
And it's and it also brings itself back from the graveyard by sending any card from your hand to the graveyard. So you can use it and then use that effect and then set it right back and use it during their turn again.
It's kind of crazy because this is it's like a searchable super poly that brings itself back, like, and it doesn't have any cost to the activation.
Yeah, it's just a regular fusion.
Like it's such a good card, but it's a C tier just because the deck just doesn't need it. You know, so the deck just has better cards, but it is a very good, like on pay. Like this is another card where if it was in any other archetype, people would be playing 3 of it, but because it's not, but because it's in this archetype, it's not that great. Which is kind of it's unbelievable to be honest with you. Like if Predaplants had this card, they'd be playing 3 of it. They'd be playing 5 of it if they could. I mean, this it would be that good. But unfortunately, it's just locked into an archetype where it's just not good. And that's the thing about Buster Blader is it actually has the smallest amount of bad cards of any of the legacy decks because all of the cards are almost all brand new. The majority of cards came out after 2015. So even the worst cards are at least decent.
They're at least options.
Yeah, they're all at least okay. Next is Whelp. I'd say Whelp is A tier.
Yeah.
This is the main card you want to start with. But, like, if it gets impermanence, you're in a rough place.
And if you like, what's it called? You can't even run things like 1-for-1. Or you can't special summon it because the effect has to be on normal summon.
It has to be on normal summon. And the search cards there's no search card. Here's the problem. There's no search cards for Whelp. Like, there's a bunch of search cards for all this other stuff, Buster Blader, the trap cards, everything else. There's not a lot of search cards for Whelp. Whelp is your main searcher, but there's no way to get to it, so you have to draw it, or you have to play stuff like Jack in the Hand, which gives your opponent advantage, and your opponent can honestly just end up picking this card. You have to play stuff like, what's the other one? Where Art Thou? But you have to already have a level 1 on the board, which that level 1, sure, it could be something like an Adhara or a Jester Confed or something like that. But again, you have to draw that with the Where Art Thou. So now you have to have this odd combination. So that's kind of the main issue with this. There's one. This is the only normal summon in the deck. It's a very good normal summon, but it's the only normal summon in the deck.
Another weird thing about him is that he has 2 other effects where he can he tributes himself and then,
to special summon a Buster Blader from a graveyard or hand.
I think it's from the hand. And then from the graveyard you can, if you control the Buster Blader, you can special summon him. But that's weird because you can special summon him, but his effect is on normal summon. So it's like you have all these cards to send him to graveyard, and then you have this way to special summon him that's built in, but then it does nothing. It just puts a monster on the field.
Like, it's kind of crazy because the bottom 2, like, it has 3 effects. The main one is going to be the search on normal summon for any Destruction Sword card. That's the effect you're always going to use. The other effects seem like they're good, but they like never come up. It's kind of insane. Like, they seriously, like, unless you're playing like a really long game and really thinking about all of the effects, those effects really don't come up all that often. Like, I've played so many games with this deck, and I swear I've almost never used that effect. I've probably, out of like 15 games, I'll use one of the bottom effects like once. But it like very rarely comes up. Next is Buster Destruction. What is it called? Buster Dragon?
Yeah, Buster Dragon. Maybe.
He's A tier. He's actually an S tier if you're talking about just Yu-Gi-Oh in general. But in this deck, he's like an A tier because you basically have to have an extra extender to get him in the graveyard so that you can attach him with the Buster Dragon. Unless you draw him, then you could just attach him from your hand. But then again, you're not really going to be special summoning Buster Blader to your field. You're going to put Buster Blader in the graveyard and then make the fusions. You're not usually going to, like do that whole thing with it. So it's a little bit odd. And again, you're going to usually attach him with the Buster Dragon, but he is very good. Of all of the
little
little guys, he's actually the best of all of the little guys because he stops your opponent from special summoning from the extra deck.
The best of the equipped little guys.
The equips, yeah, because not including he stops your opponent from special summoning from the extra deck, and then his bottom effect is actually really good too, which is if he's equipped, you could just special summon him to the field,
which is really good because you can equip him during your opponent's turn with the Buster Dragon, so when they're locked out of the extra deck. Well, they're already locked, which is kind of weird because they're already locked out of like their monsters, but then you're locking out of the extra deck, so it's like a double lock. But but double locks are secure, right? But what's it called? But during your turn, you can unequip him, and then since your Buster Dragon's going to be sent to the graveyard that turn, you can just synchro the two of them for Hot Red, like I said, or some other synchro level 9. I don't think there's any other synchro level 9 option, honestly. But yeah, you just keep steamrolling an advantage and whatnot. And if you have another thing, you can summon another Buster Dragon and just repeat the cycle.
Yeah. All right, next is Karma of the Destruction Sword. This is another D tier. It's not that it's a bad card. Again, a lot of these cards are not. It's not that it's bad. They're particularly bad. It's just that they're just better cards to play, and other things come up. This is a decent side deck choice if you're playing against a graveyard deck or something like that. But basically, what this card does is it's a quick play spell that allows you to target and banish 3 monsters from your opponent's graveyard, which again isn't bad on paper, because if your opponent has a very, I guess, graveyard heavy deck, it's actually a fairly decent card.
Yeah, if they're looping something, or they're playing zombies or something crazy.
Yeah, it's actually pretty decent. Honestly, DD Crow is probably better because they're usually going to have one card that they really, really need. So it's usually just better just to play a copy of DD Crow over this.
And it hits more.
Yeah,
I mean, not in numbers more. This definitely hits numbers more.
Yeah.
But DD Crow hits spells and traps for Eldritch and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, this card is definitely a good card for sure. But again, it's just it's a utility card. Maybe you could side deck this card, but I definitely wouldn't be main decking this card by any means. It also has a recursion effect where you can discard a Destruction Sword card from your hand and then add this card back to your hand, which is, again, pretty... It's cool that it has it, but again, it's not a card that typically comes up. Usually you're locking them out of their entire field. And then the other thing that's counterproductive is your monster gains for dragons in their graveyard, and sometimes you banish dragons. It's got its own issues. But yeah, I'd say it's a half decent card, just sort of in the wrong archetype. All right, next is Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. So this is another S tier. This is another very, very good card. You need it. All 4 of these cards are basically what you need for the lock.
Yeah, those are definitely the main cards you're always running.
Yeah, you're always running them, and you're doing it every single turn. You need it. So basically what this card does is it gains 1,000 attack for every dragon your opponent controls. All of the dragons that your opponent controls get changed to defense mode, and they can't activate their effects. It's even better than negating, because they can't activate their effects.
Yeah, they can't pay cost or anything.
Yeah. Even if they have cards that resolve in graveyard, let's say they had a copy of Pankratrops, for example, they couldn't activate the Pankratrops on their side of the field because it can't basically they can't activate the effect. Whereas if you had Skill Drain on the field, they could activate it and then it resolves in the graveyard. So
that's Pankratrops with Buster Dragon.
What?
In case anyone was
what do you mean?
Because Pankratrops is a dinosaur, but
Oh yeah. If Buster, with the full lock included, basically. But
and he also it's not like he's just gonna make it so your opponent can just flood monsters in defense mode and just stall you out until they get an imperm or something, because he gains 1,000 for each, and then he does piercing on top of that.
Yeah.
So it's they get a couple monsters out, and then it's basically curtains for them from there, because his attack's just gonna be so high, and you're just gonna keep attacking. And then the Buster Whelp can also do burn damage if they don't have anything to attack into, because he can't attack directly. It's his only like flaw. But if he could attack directly, it'd just be game with him and the Buster Blader retrain. You just destroy all their monsters, just attack. But he's just crazy.
Yeah, he's easily one of the better cards in the whole deck. Especially him with Buster Dragon is just absolutely disgusting. And again, the trap cards just enable it so easily. Like, all you basically need is this card right here, and any dragon in the graveyard, and you basically have full combo every single time. It's incredibly consistent. Next is Protector Whelp of Destruction Swordsman. This card I'd say is probably at the top of B tier. Like, it's a good option. It's a decent link monster for the deck, but it's not like something that you really need. It's got its uses for sure. Basically, what this card it does is, if you summon it, you basically can summon it using any 2 monsters. It doesn't even have to be Buster Blader cards. But you basically, when this card is summoned, you can send a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard, and then you can special summon a Buster Blader from your hand. So, decent effect. Honestly, I don't usually actually special summon the Buster Blader from my hand. It just rarely, I don't want to say it rarely comes up. Like, it definitely does come up, but
what is really cool is that it's like a send during your turn, because if I remember correctly, the only other send is the trap card, which is like, if you're gonna send one of the spells to add to your hand, you have to like send it during your opponent's turn, and you have to wait till your turn to add it back, and you have to set it using during your opponent's turn. So you can send it during your turn and then use its effect to add it back, and then like set it so you have it for your opponent's turn's disruption.
Yep. And that's it.
Oh yeah, and then the burn effect is the last part.
Oh yeah. And then the burn effect, yeah. What's it called?
If a Buster Blader doesn't, basically if a Buster Blader monster, I think it was, doesn't attack, then at the end of the battle phase or whatever it is, you can inflict burn to your opponent equal to its attack, which is perfectly aligned for the fusion monster, like I said before.
Yeah. But that is it. That's all we've got for today. We've got every single Buster Blader card reviewed here. Again, if there are any others that you want to see, or if there's anything on this list that you disagreed with, let us know in the comment section below. If there's anything we missed, let us know. There's always some weird cards that are in some random sets that we sometimes forget to include, which is extraordinarily possible with Buster Bladers. Maybe there was some random card that I forgot about.
Yeah, that didn't have Buster Blader or Destruction in the name.
Yeah, which is possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, all that good stuff, and have a great day. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, check out the other videos on the channel, and please subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Again, thank you so much. Have a terrific day.